Hello and welcome to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel, and on today's episode, I'm speaking with Nick Heaney, a resident artist and co-founder of Artnova Gallery in Chatham, Massachusetts. Nick has always found art to be his most authentic way of connecting with the world around him. Nick was diagnosed with dyslexia during elementary school. He struggled with written language, but found a connection through art. He went on to study graphic design and fine art, earning a BFA in graphic design from the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth. At the age of 26, Nick came out as gay to his friends and family with the hope of finding a partner in the future. However, he still felt a sense of disconnect with the people around him, which led to a deeper struggle with his mental health. At the age of 28, Nick sought an autism evaluation, which resulted in diagnoses of both autism and ADHD. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being a guest on my show. So I'm really excited to learn about your story and the great art and all the work that you do. So I guess to start off from the beginning, what was it like growing up with dyslexia?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with dyslexia in elementary school, and at first I really struggled to understand it, like while I was being taken out of my classes and being put into special education classes. In some ways, it made me feel like dumber than or compared to my peers. And fellow students would make rude comments about some of my accommodations, like extra time and test taking, when in the classroom they would finish the test in 5 minutes and I would take the whole class and still need that extra time. And I now see that as a blessing that I was given the accommodations for dyslexia, because I believe with my other struggles related to autism and ADHD and processing time and stuff, those accommodations were also helpful for that, but unknown at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we mentioned in your bio that you struggled with written language, but you always found your talent and your passion in art. So have you been an artist since you were really young, or like how did you get started with art?
Yes, I have always been a creative person since I was very young. And like I said, writing was a challenge. So my parents and my grandmother were very encouraging of my art. I would spend a lot of time with my grandmother drawing and doodling at her dining room table. I remember one drawing I did of her and my sister and I, and when I was done, she put it in her purse and would take it around to different family events and stuff and show everyone the art I made. And more recently, I was rewatching a family video when I was a kid, and my dad was going around showing some of my artwork and says, "Well, I hope Nick uses his talents when he grows up." So I just thought that was a nice moment.
Yeah. That's great that your family was really supportive of your art talents and really encouraged you and helped you grow and support you, because that's a big part of what you do today. I'd love to learn more about your artwork. Like, what inspires you today as you do your art?
So I'm very inspired by my surroundings here on Cape Cod. I'm surrounded by the ocean, sand dunes, and national seashore, and so very inspired by the movement and textures of the environment. My paintings are very heavily textured a lot of the time, where I'll use heavy body acrylics to sculpt the waves that come out of the canvas. And sometimes I'll mix sand into the acrylic that I collect on local beaches and stuff and mix it in, creating sand dunes. And yeah, so when I'm not painting, I'm taking time walking around the seashore and going up to Provincetown, walking through the sand dunes, and just going to the beach and crouching down and looking at the formations of the waves. And also inspired by looking at other art. So I'll kind of plan trips to go to different museums and stuff, like the MFA in Boston and the Met in New York City. And most recently, I was at the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I've seen a lot of your art on Instagram, and you paint a lot of your natural surroundings of Cape Cod and the ocean and the beach and the sand and the dunes. And Yeah, your paintings are just amazing. Like I can definitely feel myself there in that environment when I look at them. It's just really, really beautiful artwork. You mentioned you do acrylics. Like, I guess, what are your favorite artistic medium or media that you like to work in?
Yeah, so my favorite is acrylic.
Mhm.
So I'm able to achieve texture with different bodies of paint, different textures of paint
Mhm.
to build it up. And also, I like the fact that the paint does dry kind of quickly.
Yeah.
I have tried oil in the past, and I think, I mean, with my ADHD, I'm like a little impatient with the drying time of oil. So,
Oh, wow. How long does oil take to dry versus acrylic?
yeah, oils could be up to a week or more to dry,
Oh, wow.
depending. And with the textures I make, it could take a lot longer than that.
Hmm.
Where with acrylic, it's a couple hours at the most.
Wow. How many hours a day do you spend painting, or does it depend on the day?
It depends on the day, but typically I try to do at least an hour a day,
Awesome.
sometimes
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I know you have your own art gallery now, and I'll ask you a little bit more about that and how your art business came to be. But I also want to go back to your story. So, we mentioned in your introduction that you made the decision to come out as gay at the age of 26. How did you make that decision? What was it that inspired you to share that with your friends and family?
Yeah, well, I always felt like there was something a little off. I always knew, but I just wanted to share my truth with my family and friends. And I ended up coming out to a close friend this, who encouraged me to share with my family. And I was actually on a trip down in Florida visiting Disney.
Mhm.
And outside of our condo, a giant rainbow appeared in the sky.
Wow.
So after that happened, I took that opportunity to come out to my sister and brother-in-law and just share that part of my world with them.
Yeah. What was the reaction of your family and friends when you shared that?
It was good.
Oh, good.
I was nervous to share it with them, but they were all completely open and completely understanding.
That's
And
great.
actually, that morning we actually did go to the Post nightclub memorial as well,
Oh, yeah.
and just seeing some of the uh, and seeing there was one name on the memorial that read anonymous
Yeah.
because the person was not open, and that was kind of inspiring too, to just open up to my family.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big step and a big milestone. So, again, it's great that your friends and family were supportive of you. Absolutely. Even more recently than that, you recently got your autism and ADHD diagnosis at the age of 28. What led you to explore getting a diagnosis?
Yeah, I always felt a little bit of a struggle in connecting with others.
Yeah.
And part of me thought it was maybe because I was hiding my sexuality and the coming out would help ease that.
Yeah.
But after that, I was still feeling a bit of a disconnect.
Mhm.
And it really started to affect my mental health. I started kind of isolating more. And also, yeah, I just struggled to connect and notice some other things like making eye contact and stuff was challenging for me, and kind of controlling my volume and articulating certain things and some emotional things. And so I started regressing a little bit and just struggling, and also was talking a lot with my business partner, and we kind of worked together a lot at the beginning, and was kind of there like as I was interacting with others, and ended up asking if I ever considered the possibility of autism diagnosis or know anything about autism.
Wow.
And at that time, it was a struggle because I had a lot of misconceptions of what autism was and just a lot of extreme stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
But I started doing a lot of research, like listening to this podcast
Oh, thank you.
and listening to a lot of social media influencers on the spectrum and started really connecting with them. So at that moment, I decided to reach out to Cape Cod Psychology and ended up getting an appointment for an evaluation and went in and did the evaluation, a 4 hour evaluation, and a lot of follow up and a couple of weeks. And I was diagnosed with autism and also ADHD.
Wow.
And at the time, getting the report, the ADHD was a little bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this actually makes a lot of sense because I also had misconceptions about ADHD because I'm not a hyperactive person.
Right.
I have the form where I get easily distracted and like
Yeah.
kind of so like someone walks by, I'll kind of look off in the distance and kind of have trouble coming back to what I was doing. So I'm like, oh, this makes sense. And kind of walking away from projects to start a new project.
Wow. It's interesting. Our journeys in that way are kind of similar in that piece in terms of, yeah, I know I felt sort of that something was different about me. And then like you and like I think many people had misconceptions about autism and ADHD. And well, I'm not ADHD, but I'm still learning so much about those different neurotypes, and then connecting with other autistic creators and people, and be like, oh, I have such a connection with everybody. And then leading that to diagnosis. So yeah, that's really interesting how parallel our journeys are. And I'm grateful that this podcast was at least a small part of your journey. And thank you for listening. That's really great to hear. So thank you for that. You've gotten, a lot of information about yourself in a relatively short amount of time. And when you reached out to me about being on the show, you said that you've basically had to kind of learn and relearn how to navigate the world as a queer, autistic, and ADHD, and I guess also dyslexic person, or multiply neurodivergent, I guess we could say. So, what's that process been like? Like, how have you been learning and relearning since you got your diagnosis?
Oh, yeah. So I'm still very much learning and navigate the world, and it's been a couple of months now. So I am still on that journey.
Yeah.
I am gaining a deeper, more compassionate understanding of myself and kind of just giving myself a little bit of leniency when talking with others. And when I really want to focus more deeply, I will not make eye contact so I can actually hear what's being said in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working now with therapists as well that are helping me to navigate that.
Yeah.
So I was recently featured in Cape Cod Art Magazine, which is a local art publication. Shared my story and I shared about my diagnosis in there. And I was recently commissioned to do a painting for a woman who was reading the article. And then she actually shared with me that her son was recently diagnosed with autism.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had a deep connection at that moment. And she was giving me some more processing time during my explanation of my process. And
Wow.
it was just, I felt completely seen and understood by her. And she ended up thanking me for sharing my story and kind of showing her some positive examples of autism.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Maybe it's just my own experience, but I feel like a lot of people just don't get to see examples of autistic adults out in the world doing different things. I think a lot of misconceptions either say that all autistic adults maybe only do one type of work or only present one type of way. And it sounds like it was really helpful for her to see an autistic adult who, is really connected with his talents and is thriving and enjoying and has his own business, which is like really awesome. So yeah, That's great that you made that connection. And it also seems like it taught you to be a little more, I don't know, patient or gentle with yourself, or like allowing yourself to say not always have to make eye contact, because it helps you concentrate better when you're not, and giving yourself permission to do that. And I think that's a big step that it takes a lot of people to sometimes take a long time to get to. That's really wonderful, even in just the space of a few months. I'm curious, in terms of like finding community with others, have you been able to connect with any like wider communities of either other neurodivergent people or the queer community, or anything like that you've done recently?
I have. So I actually recently started attending some online queer autistic support groups
Yeah.
through the Association of Autism Neurodiversity. Based out of Watertown, Massachusetts,
Wow.
which is a suburb of Boston. So they actually have monthly support groups, and I'm able to log in and just share community that way. I'm also going in and looking for community with other artists in the area as well. And I recently signed up to actually lead some classes at a local nonprofit,
Oh,
which is Cape Cod Collaborative Artist Network. It actually is a artist network for people with disabilities. And so aspiring artists, so going in, and I'm going to start going in and hope to lead some classes and also take some classes as well.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's great that you have those local communities. And it sounds like some are online, some are in person. That's really awesome. And how exciting that you get to take classes and potentially even lead classes with other artists and other people who are really interested in art. Speaking of art, we talked about your passion for art, and now you've actually co-founded your own art gallery. So how did you make that decision to go into business and found your own gallery?
So I was working for an artist, Steve Lyons, and his partner, Peter Demers, at the Steve Lyons Gallery here in Chatham. So I was introduced to Steve by my grandfather, and Steve ended up asking me to show off my portfolio of artwork. So I did that. So he invited me to the gallery to help him open up for the summer. This was right after I graduated high school. And I ended up working for them for almost 10 years. And in the last year, Steve was diagnosed with cancer. So him and his partner had to, or went out to LA for some trials. And in their absence, they hired someone to come in and manage the gallery. Gabriel Beaton, it was now my business partner. And while they were out in LA, they actually contacted COVID. It was 2021. And Peter actually succumbed to his illness. And Steve Lyons ended up losing his battle to cancer shortly thereafter.
Oh, wow.
And that gallery was being shut down. So Gabriel decided that he wanted to stay here. His mom, Kate Merrick, is an artist who also shares the studio with me here at the gallery. And he has a lot of other artists in his life, and he himself is a very talented photographer. So he decided he wanted to go in business and open the gallery, and kind of really encouraged me to take part in that. And since I was an artist and was creating work, he invited me to do that. And together we co-founded Artnova Gallery.
What's it like running your own business?
So it's nice. I mean, like it's good having it's like being able to set your own schedule and that type of thing. And I am also very fortunate to have a business partner, because there's some areas of business operation that I struggle with. I think kind of related to my neurodiversity, like executive functioning challenges and stuff.
Mhm.
And sometimes I struggle with that. So I'm able to lean on him to do some of the other tasks involved, like taxes and stuff. And
Yeah. That's good to
And,
have a partner to help
it is.
because business just requires so many different skills that, yeah, you almost kind of need a second person who can help balance out the different skill sets. And that's
Oh,
great that that partnership sounds like it really works very well.
it does.
Yeah. So, what big goals do you have for your art?
So the big goals I have for my art is just to make a deeper connection with the world around me.
Yeah.
I hope to make a body of art that in the future that serves as a form of activism or advocacy for people on the spectrum
Wow.
and neurodivergence in general,
Yeah.
which I'm still working through. And I recently, this past weekend, actually had a two pieces of artwork on display in Philadelphia,
Wow.
hosted by the Autistic Art Coalition of Philadelphia,
Hmm.
which was the largest sensory-friendly autistic, neurodivergent, and disabled art exhibition.
Wow.
And I was able to show two pieces there. And that was a very exciting opportunity, and I was very happy to be a part of that.
It's great that there are art galleries like that that have a sensory friendly environment and really provide those opportunities to share art and enjoy art as spectators as well. Nick, how can people get in touch with you if they want to either see your art or buy your artwork?
So people can get in touch with me by visiting me at my studio at Artnova Gallery in Chatham. So I'm here most days painting and also see all the other work available here by other artists, including Kate, who I share the studio with, and Gabriel's photography. And our work is also available at artnovagallery.com and on Instagram at Artnova Gallery. I also have my personal Instagram, which is Nick Heaney Art. And my art is also available at Diversity Consignment in Jamaica Plains, Boston, and will soon be available at the Association for Autism and Neurodiversity Artist Collaborative in Watertown, Massachusetts.
Very cool. Yeah, your reach is really growing, and that's so exciting. I'll put links to your website and Instagram accounts in the show notes so that people can connect with you online, or if they want to visit, they can find you through the website as well. That's great. Yeah, well, Nick, it's been great talking with you on the podcast, and I'm just such a big fan of your artwork. I really love the work that you do. Is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know, or anything that they can help or support you with?
Yeah, so I would say first and foremost to support your local artists in your area. And if you are considering the possibility that you might be autistic or have ADHD, I would say consider the possibility of getting an evaluation. And if you have a shy friend or someone, like invite them out to dinner, invite them to join your group. And just lastly, check out all of my art and give me a follow on Instagram.
That's awesome. Yeah. And great advice again to reach out to people who maybe are a little shy and build those connections because on different levels we all need at least some form of connection in this world. So yeah. Thanks again, Nick. It's been great talking with you. I really appreciate you being a
And
guest on my podcast.
yes, thank you too. I'm excited to be here.